spend 3 to 5 minutes talking about this step of our personal experience. Then open up the room for discussion where you can talk about your discovery as it pertains to step 2. We do not crosstalk in this meeting to keep strong boundaries and maintain the focus of our step work on ourselves. No matter how long you have been involved in a 12-step program, you are a valuable member with your own experiences. No matter what brought you into the room, the solution is the same: the 12-step recovery program of your choosing. Now I would like to share my experience, strength, and hope on step 2. My name's Betty, and I am an AA coder and ACA. Okay, for me to talk about step 2, I have to go back to my early childhood. I attended Catholic school for 8 years along with my 3 siblings and learned about a punishing God. One day I went to confession. The priest asked me why my mother didn't attend church. When I told him I didn't know, he said to me, "Well, your mother's going to hell and so are you, because it's your duty as a Christian to get her to come to church." I was only 10 years old and I ran home crying. I was hysterical. I didn't want to go to hell, I told my mother when I got there. She just laughed and said the priest was lying because they just wanted more money from her. Because of this incident with the priest and also with several incidents with the nuns, I have avoided going to church for many, many years. I remember when I attended my first AA meeting in January of 1977. That was my New Year's resolution. And I heard the steps for the first time. Needless to say, I was afraid of the steps and I thought I could get sober without the steps. I avoided the steps for many months and tried many different things to stop drinking. I attended a lot of meetings and was hearing all these God stories about how God helped these people stop drinking. It made me stay in AA because I was fascinated to hear about all these miracles. I knew all these people couldn't be lying, but trying to stop drinking wasn't working for me no matter what I did. Then one night when my children were asleep and I was in a drunken stupor, I asked God to please help me stop drinking. I begged for his help because I couldn't do it on my own. Suddenly, I felt a presence and I felt hope and peace came over me. And I knew something was going to change. I didn't know what. I passed out shortly afterwards and had a feeling that something was happening. And that, when I woke up the morning, and that morning, I remembered what happened. And I knew something was changed. That evening when I came home from work, I didn't stop at the liquor store. And that's the first time in many years that I was able to stay away from a drink. The obsession was lifted overnight, just like that. And I'll never forget that night. That was August 11th, 1977. And that was my God story. And that was my spiritual awakening. A few days later, when I walked in the door of a meeting, an AA meeting, a woman approached me and asked if I would like to join a step group, a women's step group. Right away, I knew this was something I should do. I needed to get used to opening up and trusting women, and this really helped me. So I like what it says in the Big Red Book on page 135. A helpful tip in working step 2 involves replacing the word sanity with clarity. By working step 2, we gain clarity about how our family dysfunction affects us in our lives as adults. We gain clarity about our abandonment and internal shame. In this step, we are asked to open our minds to the possibility that help is available, that God can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. We don't have to believe that it will happen, only that it could happen. Just that little act of willingness can work miracles. Today, I can be aware of when I drift back into dysfunctional insanity or unmanageability, when I find myself relying on the 14 traits of an adult child in my relationships. These common ACA traits are a great gauge of flawed thinking and reacting. I try to be open today for other miracles to happen because God isn't through with me yet. More will be revealed. And that's all I have to say. And I thank you all for listening. And with that, I would like to introduce the next group member, Katherine.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katherine. I'm an ACA member and a recovering codependent. Came to believe a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Let me admit some people here. If somebody could take over admitting people while I'm speaking, that would be great. Came to believe, I believed, I was taught. I began having doubts at age 7. Life began unraveling, and by age 15, I was out. Religiosity, hypocrisy, and extreme judgment. I became a resistant believer, and I was very disillusioned and angry. God did not save my dad from his extreme behavior while drinking, no matter how much I prayed. My dad was a Jekyll and Hyde personality that I loved deeply and could not save. He died in a jail cell, leaving me in charge. A basket case mother and 4 dependent younger brothers. I became the adult at home. At 36, I developed an autoimmune disease that brought a lot of near-death experiences, and I began to reassess my belief in God. I was a cardiac nurse and saw death firsthand, along with a lot of human suffering. And I also saw love expressed in the most unlikely of circumstances. I began to develop a faith. Maybe doubts remained in naming God or my higher power, but a formulation of I'm not marooned here alone began to develop in my life. And I felt I had sanity, but on further investigation, understood my behavior was not going to work as it was, but I kept struggling, and it took another 23 years before I would discover Codependents Anonymous and eventually Adult Children of Alcoholics. And I dove into these programs and knew I belonged. The sanity issue was very confusing, and I was a little disturbed by realizing that maybe I had not been sane for most of my life. Expecting different outcomes while doing the same thing over and over again. And I understood that to be insanity, and I did that. So what would sanity be was my question. I was looking at the patterns and characteristics in Codependents Anonymous, the 14 traits of adult child behavior led me to understand that my insanity in step 2 was real. So what would sanity be for me? And through studying those traits and characteristics, I found that not fixing or caretaking others, having emotional sobriety, not acting out on impulses, not allowing others to manipulate me or me becoming a victim, and developing good boundaries. And knowing that when I'm disturbed by people, places, and things, that it is something personal, and I need to pull that thread and look deeper. Self-acceptance and self-care, calm and peace, and serenity. Being in the present, which meant no regrets over life lessons or fears for things that have not happened yet in the future. And this clearly is going to be a work in progress for the rest of my life. But what can I do to achieve this clarity, AKA sanity, and open-mindedness in this step 2? And I can adhere to principles of my programs. I can read literature and gain insights. I can attend my meetings. I can trust the process. I can have faith that sanity will be restored with the help of my higher power or the God of my new understanding, and I can gain clarity in my life. Thank you for letting me share. And I want to introduce Laura, who will be our next group member.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Laura from Louisiana. I am an adult child and a codependent. For me, step 2 poses a question to me. Do I believe that a higher power can restore me to sanity? It's a great question to ask of myself throughout my entire recovery journey. For me, all the other steps to come will rely on this answer. It causes me to pause, to consider heavily, and answer with decisiveness. It requires literally for the sake of my entire recovery process to not waver. After this decision, God will be mentioned 8 more times in subsequent steps. Now is the time to commit or to not commit. It calls me to be active, not passive. It causes me to make this decision and then to be responsible for nurturing it. So with 4 months into my program, I think, you know what, if I can get this right, I have a real chance of experiencing recovery from the effects of growing up in an alcoholic, dysfunctional, and abusive home. It asked me to be certain in a world that I feel so uncertain. To let go of 51 years of debilitating guilt and shame, and to change my beliefs about what I deserve in life. I have to admit, I was relieved when I found out that this was a spiritual program that was noted in the Big Red Book, that this is a spiritual program. We are spiritual beings going through a human experience. I thought, well, okay, if that is true, I might have a chance here. So what exactly do I believe, and what do I believe in? I look back and take a spiritual inventory of my life. I know now that my grandmother had a quiet, but ultimately significant impact on the origin of my faith. She believed in God, yes. She casted her cares often to God, as I remember. She never asked or told me to pray, interestingly enough, but she modeled a very quiet, prayerful life, and her mannerisms were very understated. She did take me to church, but you know what? Sometimes we missed. And she did not live a trouble-free life. I do believe that she battled depression in her life, especially in her later years. But she was very good at casting her cares to God. This was done in front of me all the time. I didn't recognize the significance. It was evident to me that she consistently understood that some things were just simply out of her control. And she acquired a real sense of peace about it. She was a significant caregiver to me till the age of about 6 or 7. After that, all hell broke loose, and there was a lack of spirituality. And I moved away. There was a lack of spirituality in my house. There was a lack of religion. There was a lack of accountability, and everything else. You guys know a lot about this. Moving forward in my adult life, I can see that my spiritual journey was neglected. I thought, yes, of course, I believe in God, but it was a passive belief. I would pray, yes, okay, but I did not have any real expectation from my prayers. I was deep into controlling behaviors most of my life, if not all of it. I had wanting control over my life, yes, trying to control everything, but also other people. But for some reason, I always thought that all the good happening around me was God. But I thought it was my job to fix the bad. And there was an awful lot of bad to be fixed. So if I'm honest, my faith was wavering at best. The truth is, I was only dabbling in my faith. When things would hit bottom for me, it is true that God was my first call, especially since everyone had left. There was abuse, yes, okay, but it's the abandonment, the deep-seating, gut-wrenching abandonment that came early for me. And the abandonment was and still is a strong, reoccurring, extremely painful occurrence in my life. And I admit with full credit, God has never left me on the bathroom floor. That is undeniably true. I did, in fact, know who to seek when everyone left, and they kept leaving. I didn't have to reach far. He was always there for me. But my dysfunction was deep, and I abandoned myself repeatedly. I fought for control, and I resisted a full surrender of any belief. So what about today? Same questions being asked. Step 2, do I believe in my higher power? Only then can I complete the request. Do I believe a higher power can restore me to sanity? The answer is yes. Unequivocally, I'm answering yes. I am grateful to reach a point in my life where I'm utterly, completely, and sufficiently exhausted. I am out of time. I'm out of ideas. I'm out of everything. When I finally hit my absolute rock bottom with yet another gut-wrenching abandonment crisis, the worst one yet to come, God provided me this resource, this 12-step program. Since I realized that God has delivered me, in fact, really all along throughout my life, I do believe he can bring me to clarity and sanity today. I don't think recovery will be magic. No, I don't even think it will be easy. But I believe he will help me. I have definitively decided this is true. I believe not only through him can I reach clarity and sanity, but I also believe he is the only way, since I admitted in step 1, I am powerless over these negative effects in my life. I rely on the promises in my program. There are 12. I rely on the promises in my Bible. There are over 5,000. This time, I will not waver. I will not dabble. I am all in, but I don't have to do it alone. These are the Bible verses in closing that support my recovery. I like 2 Corinthians 5. I am a new creature. The old things have passed away. Behold, new things have come. In Colossians 3, put on my new self, who is being renewed to a true knowledge. In John 10:10, the thief will come to kill, steal, and destroy, but I have come so that you may have life and have it to the full. In 1 Peter, casting your cares. In Philippians 4:6, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with gratitude, present your requests to God. And finally, where is the sanity? Where is the clarity in all of this? It's in Daniel. It's in Daniel 4:34. I raised my eyes towards heaven and my sanity was restored. Thank you. And I would like to introduce our next speaker will be Kendall.
Hey. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I had religion, but virtually no higher power. I didn't want to go to hell, but a friend said, Kendall, you're already there. I looked back at my own insanity, my insane thinking. I didn't want to acknowledge that it was possible that an intelligent, kind, perseverant person was insane. But Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. My mind was ablaze with red ants, the automatic negative thoughts that come from addiction, codependency, pain, and mental anguish. I was cocooned, exhausted, and ultimately defiant to believe that God could positively transform my life. I desperately wanted to change, or at least I wanted everyone else to change, or at least I wanted my circumstances to change. I could not withdraw from the circumstances, people, and things that were causing me pain. Like a hand drawn to a flame, I just had to touch it and fix it. I didn't realize it, but I had become God Jr. I had no peace of mind, no peace in my mind. Why were these circumstances happening to me over and over again? And why couldn't I get over them? Where was my miracle I'd been praying for? I kept trying to figure out everything. And like a mouse in a maze, I was getting nowhere. Now, in recovery, I don't have to figure it all out, but instead throw up my hands and surrender that my way wasn't working. Coming to believe is to surrender, and to surrender is simply to cease fighting, stop resisting. Then I became free to consider and accept step 2. From Bill W.'s story in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the word God still aroused a certain antipathy. When the thought was expressed that there might be a God personal to me, this feeling was intensified. I didn't like the idea. My friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? That statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last, unquote. In short, coming to believe is to be open-minded. You can't graft a new idea onto a closed mind. What if I was open-minded, that the God of my youth needn't be the God of my recovery? From the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, we find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. To one who feels he is atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. About half of our original fellowship were exactly that type. Much to our relief, we discovered that we did not need to consider another person's concept of God. Our own conception was sufficient. Per the Narcotics Anonymous basic text, the only suggested guidelines are that this power be loving, caring, and greater than ourselves. We don't have to be religious to accept this idea. The point is that we open our minds to believe, unquote. Sanity is the ability to think and behave in a normal and rational manner, ensconced in self-pity and self-centered, self-defeating character defects. I had no elusive illusion. God had abandoned. He felt very far away, and I was angry with the injustices in my life and with the world at large. I bemoaned to an old timer that I had yelled at God. He retorted quickly, "He's a big boy, Kendall. He can take it. Just start all over again." Through this program, I can give myself permission to shift from the distorted, rigid, learned indoctrination of the punishing, paternalistic, and judgmental God of my youth to an all-powerful God of recovery who is loving, kind, forgiving, strengthening, healing, and encouraging. And this God, my higher power as I now understood him, could transform my life and create sanity and peace from confusion and despair. I'm learning the difference between the dogma of religion and the language of recovery. There are wars fought over religion. In recovery, I cease fighting and start accepting spiritual principles. I use spiritual principles to help me reimagine my understanding of God. When I experience joy, serenity, acceptance, peacefulness, laughter, and kindness, despite adversity and challenges in the rooms of recovery, the essence of a power greater than myself resides, provides, and abounds. Coming to believe has shifted my paradigm of omnipresent victimhood to hopeful healing, from illness to wellness, and from dis-ease to ease. I was encouraged time and time again, don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle happens. Ugh, I'd always respond in my brain, now I've got to wait another 5 minutes. What's a miracle? One definition is a highly improbable or extraordinary event that brings very welcome consequences. As I come to believe in a power greater than myself, I experience a one day at a time recovery miracle. Thanks for letting me share. Next, I'd like to introduce Madeline.
I have to unmute myself to do this, right? Hi, everybody. I'm Madeline. I'm codependent and adult child, and I'm from North Carolina. And I basically moved into a new place today. So my mind is rattled from moving boxes. But I always get asked to share my views when this kind of topic comes up, because I'm the oddball. I'm the one that believes totally different from most of the people, especially in my state and probably in the South. But my religious views, as they are, came from my childhood. My mom was very religious. She ended up being a director of Christian education in a Methodist church. My dad was not religious. He fought it all the time. She made him come to church, and sometimes he did. Most of the times he did not. I grew up in an alcoholic home. My dad was the alcoholic, and my major in college was on purpose. I don't think I knew it at the time, but it was later after I got into recovery that I realized why in college I majored in philosophy and religion. Because there's somebody had to know what this crazy life we have is all about. Some group somewhere in the world should have figured all of this out. I had been in the Christian church all my life, and I knew they didn't know what it was. It didn't work for me. So I majored in it. And actually, I not only majored in it in college, I did it in graduate school as well, because somebody somewhere has got to have figured out this crazy life of ours. Well, that didn't really work. I didn't find a religion or religious views there. And yes, I studied all of them. Well, not all of them. Do y'all know there are over 2,000 different religious groups in America? I mean, that's a lot of people, much less the rest of the world. But I did study a lot of the major religions, and I saw some good parts in a lot of them. But they just didn't really work to make my life better. I ended up getting married, having a child, raising the child, not taking the child to church because I knew that just wasn't going to work for me. So when my marriage fell apart and I ended up in the doors of recovery, and y'all talked about these steps, you know, being powerless, number one, believing that something greater than me could restore me to sanity, number two, and number three, turning my will over to higher power. I said, absolutely not. I am not going to do that. So my religious views had to, well, collided really with recovery. It took me 8 months to do the first 3 steps. I didn't like the terminology. I didn't like a higher power concept, and I had to come up with something that worked for me. So I couldn't use the word higher power because I didn't think there was anything up there. So I ended up using the term greater power because I think there's a lot of things that are greater than me. I mean, I don't form the seasons. I don't get the trees to grow. I don't cause for snowstorms when they happen. You know, I'm not in charge of the world. I'm not in charge of nations either, whether nations bomb another nation or invade another nation. I'm not in charge of any of that kind of thing. So I knew there was something out there greater than me that got all of this kind of stuff rolling. So higher power, no. Greater power, that worked okay for me. But step 2 says, came to believe that a power greater than me could restore myself to sanity. Well, not restore myself to sanity. That sounds like I used to be sane. You guys, I grew up in an alcoholic home. There's no sanity there. So I had to redefine step 2. And that was that came to believe that something greater than me could teach me sanity. And that one kind of worked for me. So I came into recovery having to strike out the word God. That one didn't work for me. The Judeo-Christian concept of God was not the one for me. Remember, I majored in it in college and graduate school. I know a lot about who wrote the Bible, when they wrote the Bible, why they wrote the Bible, and when we accepted certain parts of the Bible. I also know that about other religions in the world. I know why they came about. You know, that was a part of my education. So religions just didn't work for me. And I had to finally agree that I just do not believe in the Christian God. So, you know, I could go on for an hour about my beliefs, but I just wanted to say that even so, this is probably the only place in recovery that I would honestly tell y'all what I think and why what I feel and why. This is the only place. I don't think outside of recovery, I could actually say the words that I am an atheist and not be tarred and feathered. So I can say that in here, and most of y'all say, that's okay, Madeline, we'll love you anyway. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you to all the speakers today. Please raise your digital hand, and if calling in, please raise your hand by notifying the chat room. If you have a question you cannot put in the chat box, you can email anatomy12steps2022@gmail.com. If somebody would put that in the chat box, please, which will be monitored by our trusted servant, Ava. Please limit your shares to 3 minutes. We have a large group, and a timer will notify if needed, or you can self-time, up to you. It is now time to open up discussion on step 2. Karen, please share.
Yes, Karen, ACA. Yeah, this has been a really good exercise. I have been stuck on this step for a while because of the kind of the religious element, I know, or the spiritual element. And for me, sorry, I'm timing myself. As a scientist, I've always tried to kind of distance myself as far away as possible from anything that can't be described by facts or whatever. So this has been hard for me. My family wasn't really religious. My dad grew up in, I think, a fairly Catholic upbringing, but I think something happened there because he was not religious at all by the time we came about. My mom wasn't really either. So I never really had much exposure to it. So I decided to read up on spirituality this weekend, and I kind of like it. The spiritual dimension tries to be in harmony with the universe and strives for answers about the infinite. I like that. Spirituality suggests that there's something greater that connects all being to each other, to the universe itself. This kind of sounds almost sciencey to me. I can accept that. But I think in the meantime, my greater power or higher power is the process of the 12 steps. I think I just have to trust the process. Trust that doing the 12 steps and the process will lead me to clarity or to sanity. So that's kind of how I'm working around it right now, while I kind of maybe start to explore a spiritual side. I think I just have to really trust the process. So thank you for letting me share. Pass.
Thank you, Karen. Maria?
Good night, everybody. Thank you for letting me share. I actually found this step quite interesting. When I started, I was like, I grew up also in a very, very extreme Catholic background. Being from Mexico, I always went to Catholic school just for girls and all of that. And there was definitely have a very strong Catholic wound, I will say, but I was fortunate enough to have nuns and some spiritual examples of people that were really exemplifying, kind of walking the talk. So I just love the nuns. They were really fun and very sweet. So I had a good example of that. So I really never had trouble with I had a very strong connection with my spiritual power before, I would say a few years ago, when I came out of the closet. And it was just a few years ago, I felt like I blocked that connection to my higher power because I had such a strong, powerful connection. I have very beautiful experiences where I felt things that I'm like, whoa, this feels like something definitely greater than myself. But yeah, a few years back, I realized that I totally blocked that connection. And I have a very beautiful spiritual practice right now that I love, but it focuses more on the inner God, how God, how you are in charge of our own destiny and all of that, which I love. But with this step, definitely realizing that I also need like not only the inner, but the outer greater power, I would say. And with this step, I realized like why I was blocking my connection to my higher power. And it was question number 7 from the homework that says that what fears are getting on the way of trusting enough to come to believe in something greater than myself. And I had like fear of failure, fear of losing control, fear of not being enough. But I think the biggest one for me that really kind of like, like my intuition told me like, this is the one, is the fear of being irresponsible and disappoint people. I feel like if I let go of the control, I'm being irresponsible. And it's just not true because I'm a responsible person. And yeah, it's just, it's been great. I feel an energy shifting in me. I had beautiful experiences this week because of this step. I was being a little bit codependent with my partner and telling her what to do. And then I was like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. And she went to a meeting and everything I needed to tell her, it was said on the meeting. And I was like, ooh, that's my higher power being like, let me handle the situation. So thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing. Carrie?
Hi, Carrie, ACA. Well, I just find it interesting that every civilization since the beginning of time has found some kind of God or higher power, what they want to call it, wind, sun, Jesus, Buddha. So I've never had a problem believing in spirituality or with this step 2, struggling with the religious aspect of it. When I was young, my mother was French Catholic and my father was Irish Catholic, and there were 2 separate churches because there was that kind of segregation back in the day. And my mother would always bring us to church, sit us right in the front row, and I liked it. But when she got sick, that kind of stopped. And I was fortunate that there was this novitiate farm. It was probably about 2 miles away from my house. And there were brothers there that were studying to be priests. And it was in this beautiful mountain. It's the most beautiful place on earth. So I had all kinds of freedom. And I would, from the age of 6 on, every Sunday, I would ride my bike up to church at 7 o'clock. I was the only family that went to church. So as a child, I found a lot of peace there. And I don't know if it was the peace of nature and the spirituality or just kindness of this brother Protes that ran the farm. He was like my father. So I loved that. And the times in my life that, my mom died of alcoholism when I was 9. And the times in my life that I've gotten away from the church, those have really been the hardest times in my life, when I didn't go to church, when I didn't feel the spirituality. So this program, I don't struggle with step 2. And it's amazing. I do believe and know that there's something higher power than us, because after my mother died, I had this amazing spiritual encounter that, they, whoever it was, my little angels, God, whoever this higher power is. And I've always believed that my little angels watch over me my whole life. It's been good. Actually talked to me. I was having a total meltdown anxiety attack at 9. And the voice came down and said to me, you know, everything's going to be all right. And told me like 4 things that were going to happen in my life. And they did. So I truly believe that there's a higher power than us. And my higher power is me make better decisions and change the way that I've thought, and helping me reparent myself so I don't keep making the same mistakes and having the same outcomes. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Carrie. Nancy is next.
Hi, my name's Nancy. I'm a member of Al-Anon and CODA. So step 2 is one of my favorite steps. Step 2, step 3, step 11. For me, they all kind of go together. Like so many other people have said, I grew up in the Catholic Church. And although I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore, I do believe that I got a solid sense of spirituality from the Catholic Church. I can think of many times throughout my life, even before the program, that I could feel God's presence in my life. And so, before I came into the program, I did have several years where that spiritual connection was not as strong. And I grew away from the church. I grew away from, I was disillusioned with the church. I was disillusioned with religion. And so when I came into the program, and step 2, I was asked to work step 2. What I had to do was really separate out what I learned about higher power from the dogma of religion, from what the higher power that I wanted in my life. I had to learn the difference between a positive higher power and a punishing higher power, because I was taught a little of both in the church. And so I had to separate that out in my head. And one thing that I did, which was really revealing, my sponsor told me to write down all the characteristics of my father, my biological father. So I did. And then she said, turn the paper over and write down all the characteristics of your mother. So I did. She said, put that paper aside. So I did. And she said, I want you to write down the characteristics of the higher power that you used to have, the higher power that you had at that time had up until now. So I did. And I realized that all the characteristics that I was attributing to my higher power were the characteristics of my father, not my mother, but my father. And the loving and nurturing characteristics of my mother, I was not attributing to a higher power. So I decided that I was going to reinvent my higher power with some of the characteristics that I had from my previous higher power, and then from the characteristics of my mother that I loved. And so I put all that together, and that's been kind of my concept of a higher power since then. And I truly believe that my higher power can restore me to sanity, because I have all these pieces of evidence throughout my life that I don't have time to tell you now, but I have lots of evidence throughout my life that my higher power has worked in my life before the program and since the program. So I love step 2. And I do want to second what Madeline said. I think that people can work the program well with using all kinds of different higher powers. The 12 steps can be a higher power. The wisdom of the program can be a higher power. The nature can be a high, whatever. And we can all sit around the same table and accept each other, which I think is the beauty of the program. That's all.
Thank you, Nancy. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm an ACA. I grew up Catholic as well. Back the questions, number 1 said, can I come to believe that I had an inner strength all along that helped me survive an abusive childhood? I said, yes, I didn't do it alone. Holy Spirit gave me the strength and has guided me through my life thus far. I just finished a military career after 20 years, and I know that it was only through God's strength and help that I was able to be humble and not go belly up on my career and not be destructive. I did, though, did the military with a lot of self-hatred, so I'm happy to leave that, let that go with the program and with working the steps. Am I open to the possibility of accepting a power greater than myself is a spiritual problem rather than a mental problem? In AA, they say my best thinking got me here. So yes, it's definitely a mental problem, and accepting the loving care of my higher power to guide and care and love me through is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. Came to believe means to me, I believe coming to believe is letting things happen and open up and let God in, not have to control everything. How do I define sanity? What would a change to sanity look like in my life? Insanity is where I live in the past or the future. And the present is where I can find sanity, and that's where higher power is. The change to sanity means that I don't react to life and I'm able to have choices, let go of the past and the future, and not have to be in control all the time. Sanity in my life, having a spiritual director, coming back to ACA, learning how to parent myself, being open to love in life, having choices, not self-hating, loving myself, taking care of myself. Am I running out of time?
You're fine.
Okay. Let's see. So number 6 is what changes in thinking, believing, and attitude are required to change my behavior to gain or regain sanity. Recognizing that my way got me here and that God's way is the only way. Have to get back to basics and work the steps, and can't do this by myself, and remember that it's we are doing it. What fears are getting in the way of trusting enough to come to believe in something greater? I'm afraid of people losing control. I did have a problem in the past when I did Al-Anon. I had a man 13 step me. That was pretty awful. Fear of losing people, family rejecting me, being alone, not getting better, staying stuck. I have a big problem with not doing it right. And how are the principles of open-mindedness and clarity going to help me complete this important step? Well, my thoughts are pretty all over the place, and I'm pretty conflicted. So being open-minded and embracing clarity I think will help me to cut through the crazy thoughts and how my processor is out of sync, and that I need to learn how to process in a new way and get over the ambivalence and being afraid to think for myself, and learn how to care for myself and not be afraid, and also not allowing narcissists to control me and treat me like an object. So gotta release myself from brainwashing and be who I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura, ACA and CODA. I really appreciated the step 2 homework. I have always sort of struggled with my spirituality because I've always believed in God or a higher power, but I've never really had the belief that the higher power is there for me. Because growing up, my parents had so much going on with my other 2 siblings, there wasn't really time for my issues or my problems. And so I always tried to handle everything myself or make my problems smaller so that my parents weren't overwhelmed by me, because they already were overwhelmed with my siblings. And I think because of that, I kind of grew up with the notion that I have to kind of look out for myself. But simultaneously, I also didn't think I had the power to control or change anything. So I kind of always felt at this crossroads of not having anyone care for me, but also not being able to care for myself is kind of a scary, isolating feeling. And I think it comes from my parents kind of treating me as like a third parent to help with my siblings, but then not really ever giving me permission to actually, help or give advice when it came to issues that my siblings were having. So question 6, what changes in thinking, believing, and attitude are required? I kind of realized that I do have to change my thinking and accept that there is a higher power that does care about me, that, where my parents have fallen short, God is there. And when I hear other people talk about God and believing in God, I always sort of feel kind of like jealous, like I wish I had that belief and I wish I was strong in my convictions, but it's not natural for me to believe that God is really there for me. So I really am trying to come to believe that. And the way I've tried to do that this week is think about the little things that have happened in my life that God did have a hand in, that maybe I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, there's no other way it could have been. Question 7, what fears are getting in the way of trusting enough to come to believe in something greater than myself? I think I fear that deep down, I'm afraid that I'll believe in God and trust, and I'll end up being wrong and everything will fall apart. I feel that I do this a lot with my addiction to to dieting and restrictive eating, and all of that is like a control pattern that I have, that I'm trying so hard to control that aspect of my life instead of giving it up to God and accepting that I'm made in God's image, and that He ultimately has control over that, and that He loves me for more than what I look like or how much I weigh. And so, I am afraid of that, of letting go and letting God take over, and ultimately everything will fall apart. But the thought that there is a God out there that cares about me and cares about my problems and wants to walk with me through the 12 steps is very reassuring. And I hope to come to believe that. And it is helpful to hear everyone's shares and hear of other people having these strong convictions. And I hope to come to believe that for myself. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Laura. Natasha had her hand up. I'm not sure if that was a mistake or if she wanted to share and changed her mind. Natasha would be before Barbara. If Natasha wants to share. Okay, we'll go ahead with Barbara.
Hi, everyone. I'm Barbara, a recovering adult child, and also attend Al-Anon. I realized when I was doing the homework and answering some of the questions that my concept of a higher power is still evolving. And I think it will continue to evolve until I'm no longer here, because I know that I do believe in a power that's greater than me and the rest of the human beings on the face of this earth. And I am really grateful that I do. Growing up, my grandmother took me to church. Both my parents suffered from the disease of alcoholism and died at young ages, 41 and 60. Those are young ages to me. And they both died of the disease of alcoholism. So I grew up in a very dysfunctional home and stayed with my grandmother a lot, who did go to church. And I can remember her taking me to church with her. And there was something about being there that did give me a sense of relief and peace. And so I continued to go to church for the rest of the time, regardless of where I went. And I went everywhere. I had been married and divorced, and we lived overseas, and I went to church just anywhere we lived. And I lived in a lot of different states in one different country. And I always went to church because that's where, for some reason, I could find some peace. Even though, I thought in my mind I would fight against some of the teachings, some of the things that they would say, and some of the things that some of the people who were in leadership positions would do. So I still struggled with the concept of, I guess, the Christian God. However, I guess I'm going to go back and say the greatest thing to me about this program is that it has given me the liberty to develop a relationship with the higher power of my own understanding. Because and that higher power for me is a power that, first of all, is about unconditional love and forgiveness to me. It's about my higher power has a sense of humor. And I think that my higher power has to have a sense of humor. That's a characteristic. These are just characteristics that I've decided that my higher power has. And it has made a difference, huge difference in my life, to have a sense of humor, to always, that's forgiving, that's kind, that's loving, compassionate, and understanding. And I have believe that I have a much greater relationship with this higher power because I've chosen to decide that those are the characteristics. I guess those are some of the characteristics that are important to me in someone who's going to be greater. There are a lot of more characteristics, but I won't discuss those. But the insanity, came to believe that a power greater than me could restore me to sanity. Now, there were a lot of, I never even thought about the word sanity before coming in, sanity or insanity before coming into this, a 12-step program. All I know is I was doing a lot of things over and over again and getting the same results, and I was miserable a lot of the time, but I didn't understand what was going on, or why I was behaving, or why I was making the choices that I was making, until I came into a 12-step program and understood, and I'm so grateful. I say it all the time, that I was willing to open up my mind and allow myself to listen and to learn and not close up, because when I first started into the program, people were so different. Everybody was a different race, and I could have very easily used that as an excuse not to keep coming back, to learn and to grow and to heal. So I thank my higher power, and I thank myself for continuing to come into these rooms to listen. And I cried a lot, and I still grieve, because I've experienced so many losses in my life. However, I've gained so much as well from being a part of this great fellowship. And I do believe that my loving higher power is restoring me to sanity, because I'm making much better choices, much better decisions. I'm being much more loving to myself, more accepting of myself and other people. And I'm not as afraid, because when I came into this program, I think I was addicted to fear, because the environment was it was very scary for me as a child, as a teenager. And I'm not so afraid of the world anymore, not so afraid of people anymore. And that is just making a huge difference in my life. And I have to give credit, and I'm just so grateful for the people who come to these rooms, and the people who put this on, and people who are willing to share your experience, strength, and hope, because I learned and gained so much from it. And with that, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Barbara. Pat and Joe?
Yeah, that's me. Boy, step 2 for me was at first a struggle. In that I had grown up in the church, and as somebody said earlier, God wasn't there for me. Not when I got all this pain and got all this anger, and I wasn't happy. I felt like God had abandoned me, and I was angry at that. And when I came into these rooms, I would probably say that I was more agnostic than anything. I didn't know and I didn't care, because, I wasn't happy. Thank goodness my sponsor didn't spend a whole lot of time on this, but got me to realize that this step comes, it has 3 important words. First, we come to these meetings, and then we come to. And for me, it was, hello, because the come to is, I'm not in charge. And then we come to believe. Now, we don't have to do it today. We don't have to do it tomorrow. We might do it at step 9. We may do it never. If we come to believe that there is something other than me, I can't fix it. Madeline said earlier, I can't make the sun rise. I can't control the things I always wanted to control. And my sponsor got me to realize, Pat, the most important thing with this step is for you to realize you're not it. You are not the higher power. You're not the one to make all the decisions about everybody and what they should do. And, so I come to these meetings. I come to, so I kind of wake up. That's what happened. And then I come believe. So we worked 2 and 3 pretty quickly before we got on to 4 and 5, where to me I started really diving down into where some of that crazy thinking was driving my pain, was driving my suffering, and was driving my fears. Thank you. That's all I got to say. Oh, by the way, I'm Pat from Virginia.
Thank you, Pat. Ava?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ava, and I'm an adult child. I don't really know what I want to say here, just a bit of story about my higher power journey. When I was a child, I had a heart for God. And it really wasn't so much the God in my Sunday school, because I went to a tiny little Sunday school on the corner of a country road, and it was pretty corny. Sunday school was kind of corny, and church was really boring because the minister, his name was Chauncey Mullins, and he was as dry as a soda cracker. It was very boring. So it wasn't so much what I got from there, but it was just how I felt about things. I've always been able to be moved by things, moved greatly in my heart. And that for me was, I think, my heart for God. And I've thought about this. I don't know if I was really codependent already when I was young, but I used to stand on the back step of my house, and it looked out over a lake, and there was a star that always appeared, which I realize now is probably Venus because it was, so bright and so ever present. But anyway, there was a star, and I would wish on it every night as a girl that everyone in the world could be happy. So is that codependency, or was that just a child's loving heart? I guess it doesn't matter. That's what I did. And for me, it's just always kind of a feeling. Right now, I get that expanded heart feeling when I behold the beauty of nature, particularly flowers, because they are so outstandingly beautiful. They have form, they have color, and they have fragrance. I mean, they are staggeringly beautiful. And the more I behold them, the more I get that expanded feeling, because what I'm seeing is love and intelligence, because they're smart. Everything about everything and about us is designed. It's intelligent design. It's designed for us to survive. It's designed for us to attract. It's designed for us to propagate. It's designed for us to survive. So there's this great intelligence in design, and that really turns me on. That really thrills me. And then when you combine beauty with intelligence and love, for me, it's a feeling of expansion and awe and wonder. So that's my higher power. My higher power is a feeling. I guess that's the way to say it right now. But it does evolve. I mean, I'm not a little girl anymore. I don't wish on that star anymore. But there's something. Although I'm evolving, there's something consistent about that feeling, that heart feeling. That is always part of my relationship to God or the goddess or source or the universe. There's many words now that we can happily use and easily use and not be criticized for using. It's wide open. I mean, you can make a God up of so many parts now because it's all there, all the mystery school, the secret knowledge. It's all out. It's the age of Aquarius, and that was one of the things that was predicted. That all the hidden knowledge would come to the masses, and we can do a lot with that. Okay, thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Ava. Renelle?
Hi, everybody. I'm Vernell. I'm a recovering codependent and an adult child of a dysfunctional family. And I would like to say that, I've got 15 years in CODA, so a lot of my recovery came in CODA. And I want to specifically, by the way, great shares. I've enjoyed everything I've heard. I specifically just want to look at question 2. Am I open to the possibility that acceptance of a power greater than myself is a spiritual problem rather than a mental problem? I absolutely believe it's a spiritual problem. And I'm going to take us back to the CODA Blue Book on page 16 that says, it's a spiritual dilemma. Because what is the spiritual dilemma, according to Coda? As we turn ourselves into a higher power or give this power to others, we leave little room for our higher power to work in our lives. This is our spiritual dilemma. And that was absolutely my spiritual dilemma when I walked into the rooms of Coda 15 years ago. And then I found ACA. Very grateful for that. But anyway, that's all I wanted to share, that for me, it was a spiritual dilemma because I thought that I could figure things out quicker, better, and faster than God. And I suffered a lot of pain through that. So I'm very grateful that I have worked this step many, many times. It's a great step. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Vanell. Emily?
Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Emily, adult child and codependent. I just wanted to say, I think my higher power maybe sort of found me about, if you guys can hear me, about, boy, like 12 years ago, probably more than that. I had just divorced, or at least separated. The divorce wasn't final yet from my narcissistic ex-husband. And I remember, you know, I didn't have a job at the time. I just remember my kids were little. They were, you know, 5 and 6 or something. And I just remember we were at the playground, and I remember this every year. I think about this every year. We were at the playground down the road. And we had to go to the grocery store afterwards. And I was worrying, do I have enough money to get everything that we need, you know, for this week? How am I going to pay for groceries? You know, how are we going to be warm or cold, you know, as the case may be, whatever season it was when we get home. Just full of worry. I wasn't even, I came from a dysfunctional family. I wasn't drinking or anything like that. I was just literally worried all the time. Just how are we going to do this? How am I going to survive? How the kids going to, and I had this moment come over me that it was serenity. It was a moment of just, we were at the playground, like I said, we were on the, I was pushing my daughter on the swing, looking up at the trees, and just this moment of peace and serenity, and just like the top of my head had been peeled off so I could see, wow, it's okay. You're going to be okay. This is just this one moment. And I can't identify that God. I can't identify that the higher power. It doesn't matter. I started looking for more. I was like, it went away. It didn't hang on really long, but I just remember I felt that way for a good 2 or 3 minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And I need more moments of that. And I started looking, I started waiting for them. I started looking for them, and they started happening. And I guess as far as my higher power, I waited for it. I mean, it was a surprise to me. It came as a complete shock, but I needed it. And it was great to see, and it was great to feel. And then once I knew it was there, I was like, okay, I can start making this happen on my own now. And I haven't really shared yet in this 12-step journey. So I just wanted to mention that's a mile marker that I always remember. I'm more spiritual than religious. I don't go to church, but that's definitely a mile marker that I always remember about the same time every year. And I celebrate it, and I don't know what I do without it. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Emily. It's now time to close the sharing portion of the meeting. Does anyone have a burning desire to share on this topic? A few members will stay after the meeting for any further questions from new members of the STEP study. Homework for the next step will be promptly sent out by Ava. Thank you, Ava. If there are any questions regarding homework, our trusted servant Ava at anatomy12steps2022@gmail.com can be reached in the same email that you registered for the program. One of our members presenting step 3 is going to talk a little bit about the preparation for step 3. Renelle, would you like to share?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you for great shares tonight on step 2. Yes, Nancy, I don't know if you're still on here. I hope you are. Nancy and I will be facilitating step 3. And this, I call it, now we've done 1 and 2. We will be putting in the 3rd brick of the solid foundation, because I believe steps 1, 2, and 3 are our solid foundation for the rest of the steps. At least I rely on them very much. So we will be getting this out, as we said, Ava will be getting that out to you as soon as possible. And we're looking forward to having you answer these questions and come back with some great thoughts and ideas. And of course, let me just read step 3. We're doing it from the ACA step 3 wording. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God. Thank you.
Thank you, Vernell. I just want to say that anonymity is our spiritual foundation of this program. Let what is said here, who you see here, when you leave here, let it stay here. And Laura will close the meeting tonight with our chosen prayers. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Vernell.
Thank you, guys. This is our step 2 prayer from Coda, if anyone wanted the reference on that. In this moment, I can believe that I am never alone. I can experience the sense of freedom that having a higher power offers me. I can remind myself that believing is also an action, and if I am willing to practice it one moment at a time, I will develop faith. And the closing prayer for Coda Recovery Prayer. God, help me to accept other people as they are, recognize my own feelings, meet my own needs, and love myself just as I am. Thank you all.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everybody, for your participation.